Welcome to Junkyard Haunts, where we turn trash into haunts. Today we're going to be making Spider from the game Don't Starve. I really like this game. I think all of the creations for it look really cool and awesome, so I may make more of these creatures in the future. But we're also going to be making this purely from newspaper. Basically from newspaper. In order to do this, we just roll some newspaper up to a ball and then roll more newspaper around it and tape it closed. And for its legs, we're going to roll newspaper up in a long roll and tape them closed. And then try to bend them. And then we're going to do some paper macheing. To do the paper mache, just mix some water with flour. Make sure it's fairly runny, and that will make everything easier. You just put the paper mache mixture over the ball and then rub or cover it with a large sheet of newspaper, and then put the mixture over that large sheet of newspaper and rinse and repeat, and do this over and over and over again. I think mine was probably like 10 layers of this, maybe more, probably more. So you just want to keep going over and over and over again. And we do the same for the legs. But make sure that you actually keep them a nice bend in them. And even when they're drying, you can make sure that you dry them at the bend so they become nice and hard. And again, I probably have 10, maybe even 15 layers of this. We're going to cut it open to get the actual mouth part. And here we're going to do some new stuff. We're going to take some old material, douse it in a whole bunch of white glue or PVC glue or whatever glue you want, really. And then we just cover up the new hole with it and paint it red after it dries. Because of how big his mouth is open, this is probably not a super necessary step. I think we went a little above and beyond doing this, but that's okay. It never hurts to go above and beyond, but it does hurt to not go above and beyond. And now we're going to shape its mouth to look like the actual video game with some masking tape. We just tape the pieces back together, and then because there will be gaps of stickiness inside, I'm actually just covering that up with tape as well. And then we need a stick on its legs, which I just both hot glue on, and then I tape the legs on with some more masking tape. The trick is to make sure that you're going along and make sure that each leg is actually touching the ground so it's nice and supported very well. Now, to me, this is not very strong and sturdy, so instead I wanted to just make sure that it stays together, and it's a lot harder to break. And by doing this, I go and do another paper mache and covering up all the masking parts. Now, I do add a little bit more on later on, which I probably should have done before I went and paper mache'd it, just to save time. So you can learn from my mistake, but at the same time, it's a mistake that's easy fixed. You just add it and then add more paper mache when the time comes up. Now for its eyes, I want some big bulky eyes, just like the video game. And in order to do that, I just take some old pill bottles and take their caps off and just glue it straight on. And this thing does have teeth, and so for teeth, I'm just taking some cardboard that I will be covering back in paper mache just to make it nice and hard. But before I actually put the cardboard pieces on, I paint both the mouth, all the new parts that I added with that tape, and I paint the teeth white front and back that way, because it's going to be really hard when it's glued on to be able to paint the back of the teeth. Again, that's something that people don't necessarily see, but I just say, hey, go the extra mile, why not? Now here's the part I was talking about earlier where I should have glued or added these on, the little fins on its legs. I should have added that on before I paper mache'd it, because I'm just going to have to go through and paper mache the fins too, just so it's strong and sturdy. And by the end, since this is just all newspaper, you'd be surprised how strong this thing is. This is very, very strong, but it only comes because of the amount of layers I did. And this spider should actually have some fur coming around its body. Its legs are not furry in the video game, so we're just going to not make that furry. But to do this, I just take my old pillowcase, actually, and I just cut it out into long strips, and then after I get a bunch of long strips, I cut those down even smaller, just so they're only about 1 inch to 2 inches long. And that we'll actually use that to make the fur part that covers his body. And to just like its mouth, what you do is you cover that material in the white glue, and then just place it onto the actual body. It's that easy. But I didn't want it to be smooth or flat or anything. I actually wanted this to stick out and kind of be curly. So I make sure one side's on pretty good so that it actually stays glued on and attached. But I try to make the rest of it to have twists and turns and curls into it. And I just keep going through and adding more and more and more and more on. Trying to keep and covering just his body part and making sure that those little twists and turns are on it. That way it actually somewhat looks like fur after it's done. But junkyard style fur, where it's actually not fur, but way cheaper to make than buying some fake fur to put on it. And after you take this long process of covering it up, make sure you get all of it, the top and bottom. His legs do keep the body off, so you will see the bottom, so it's good to tip it on its side while you're doing that part, just to make sure you get it all. And since we aren't covering the legs at all, it's easy to hold that too to see all the different sizes. Now, since I did paint its mouth red and its teeth white already, this is normally a time that I'd want to spray paint the black. Since I made those cloth things actually curly, it is hard to get a paintbrush into covering up all the bits and parts. So this will take a long time, where spray paint would just shoot in as long as you see the spot to make sure you're shooting that way. But we'll just cover this whole thing in black. And this will take a while just because you have to find all of those little holes, all those crevices created. I make props every Monday, so make sure you subscribe to follow along. And make sure you share with all your friends this cool prop, especially if they play Don't Starve, so they can have their own Don't Starve figurine in real life. After we get this whole thing covered, we just touch up the eyes, make sure they're nice and white, and its teeth to also make sure they're white. Normally teeth I don't actually make white, but to match the video game this time I did. And just to add a little bit more characteristic and actually detail to actually bring out those furs, because you can't really tell it's fur very well since it's all black, we're going to dry brush some white over it. And dry brushing is simply taking a little bit of paint, rubbing it off, and then lightly going over the whole thing. Thanks for watching that video. Don't forget to hit subscribe to follow along, and don't forget to share with your friends. For anyone who plays Don't Starve, make sure you put a comment below. Tell me what other Don't Starve creature I should make, because it's awesome. And if those who don't play Don't Starve, go buy Don't Starve, because it's awesome. So I was inspired by another YouTube channel to do something like this in the same style that that person does it in. So I will put a link in the description to go check out his stuff. Think of his stuff as way better than mine. Don't Starve is like my favorite impossible game that I never play because it's too hard. They need to make that game way easier. But it looks so cool. Look at it. It's so cool.